got a question?
Yeah, suppose you say that that's the phases that they supposed to use, but suppose they didn't even give you those and just say, here, look.
Well, that's what I call the question is what if they don't follow the proper procedure in the testing? They don't give you the HGN, they don't give you the walk and turn, they don't give you the one-leg stand, they just simply say blow in this. I call that a blow and go. All right? Just say they've asked you to step out of the car, you told them you had something to drink a couple hours ago, you really just left the party, and then you get out and they say, well, you know, how about just blow in this? You blow in it, you just had something to drink, the alcohol sensor doesn't have what's called a slope detector. That is, it's a computer program actually. It's not an actual piece of equipment that has anything to do with any operation. It's actually a computer program that's designed to differentiate between deep lung air and residual mouth alcohol. But what happens is they cheat. They skip all their tests and they go straight to the alcohol sensor. So remember, you told them you had drinks hours ago. It should have dissipated from your mouth. All right, now once you have a drink of alcohol, it takes 20 minutes at least for it to get out of your mouth. And that's from I guess a good clean mouth without dentures, without bleeding gums or anything like that. If you have bleeding gums or you have dentures, if you've got bleeding gums and you blow in either the alcohol sensor or the Intox 5000, what you're doing is you're blowing raw alcohol into the machines because you've got alcohol in your blood. And if you've got bleeding gums and you've got blood in your mouth or you've been in a fight or anything has happened to you, you got a busted lip. I had a client one time whose boyfriend just beat the stew out of her in a car. She had a busted nose, busted lip, and they wanted her to go down and she blew a .15. But she had blood in her mouth. So what you're doing is you're not blowing deep blowing air, you're blowing raw alcohol right into it. But what happens is when they skip those steps, back to your question, when they skip those steps, it'll come back to haunt them in court because they've got training to do. They've just taken shortcuts. Now my philosophy is that if anybody has to follow the law or follow their training, it ought to be the police. They shouldn't be able to take shortcuts in this. You're arresting somebody. You're taking somebody to jail. You're taking away their freedom. You're taking away their liberty. You should have to follow the correct steps and do your job like you are been trained to do it. And normally when you go through these, you sort of set an officer up a little bit sometimes by simply saying, you know, you've been trained on this. People smarter than you and I have developed all of this training and it's for a purpose, isn't it? Well, that purpose is to make sure that you get an accurate result on whatever you've done, you know, to evaluate these people. Well, they'll say, yeah, that's true. And then you get into they skip these steps. So basically what happens if they skip the steps, you show the steps they should have done, what they should have had, the information they should have had before they arrested you. If they don't skip the steps, then what you do is, as a defense attorney, you look for how they messed up, how they didn't do the test correctly, how they didn't perform horizontal gaze nystagmus. One of the things about horizontal gaze nystagmus, like I say the first test, is that you're supposed to keep your head still and follow their stimulus. You know, pen, the end of a pen, a flashlight, your finger, back into your eyes. Well, the thing about that is, if you note, and something I look for, is that if you note in their report that the person was unsteady on their feet. Right, so you got somebody that's staggering, can't stand up very well, and yet you give him the HGN, he doesn't qualify for HGN because you're supposed to stand with your feet together, your hands by your side, keep your head still. Right? It's a disappearing sway is what I call it because the person's swaying, oh, he's swaying sure enough, but then I gave him the test and he was solid. He was standing just straight as he could be, straight as stiff as air. And as soon as I got through with that, he went back to swaying again. It doesn't make sense. You just have to go through and pick out the issues that you have in the report versus what he actually did. Yes, sir.
How many times are they liable to blow you?
On the side of the road?
Yeah.
As many times as you want to blow it. Quite frankly.
So they just say, they check it and say, okay, blow again.
Yeah.
Blow again.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
As many times as you want to volunteer to blow, because that's what you're doing. Now what you need to understand is the field sobriety tests are not mandatory. You're under no obligation to take any test they want to give you on the side of the road. Okay? The only test that if you don't take that'll hurt you is a state test, which will be either the Intox 5000, a urine test, or a blood test. Okay, if you refuse to take those tests, after you've been arrested, that'll come back to hurt you and haunt you in court. All right, because they can use your refusal against you, okay? But on the side of the road, you don't have to do any of those tests, okay? You don't have to do it. Now, just a little explanation about HGN, horizontal gaze nystagmus. Of course, horizontal is on the horizontal plane, back in two. You gaze as that you're looking at whatever the stimulus is. But nystagmus, does anybody know what nystagmus is? Nystagmus is involuntary jerking of the eye. That's all it is. If you wanted to see nystagmus, the easiest way to do it is to, you can have rotational nystagmus. Basically, the easiest way to see it without anybody drinking is to take somebody and spin them. Just have them stand up here and spin them around as fast as you can. 15 or 20 seconds. Just have them spin, have them spin, have them spin, have them spin. Put them back up against the wall and have them look at something at the opposite end of the room. All right, just a little above their line of sight. Usually like a little sprinkler nozzle or something, fire sprinkler nozzle or a clock up on the wall. Once they look at that, if you got them, you might have to have somebody hold them because they're going to be a little wobbly. Have somebody make sure they can stand up. Tell them to look at that stimulus at the end, and you'll notice their eyes jump. You'll notice their eyes twitch. That's what they're looking for. That's nystagmus. Now you can get nystagmus from, like I say, from other things other than alcohol. Okay? So like I say, exactly, if you've been in an accident, you can have rotational nystagmus. I mean, there's different things that can cause a person's eye to jump. A person can have natural nystagmus anyway. Now, the thing about it is, it doesn't matter if they've got the best camera system ever put in a police car, or a television camera, or a movie camera, or whatever they have at the cinemas out here. You can't see nystagmus on a video. First thing that's going to happen is they shouldn't have you facing the car in the first place because you've got strobe lights going. So you shouldn't be facing the car taking this test. They should have you facing away from anything that's going to cause you to divert your attention with your eyes. Okay? And when they do, just think about that. The officers on the other side, they've got you turned away from the video camera. There's no way that you're going to see nystagmus. You can't feel it and you can't tell it yourself. The brain compensates. If your eyes jump, the brain compensates for that. So you don't know that you're doing it. You have no control over it. Do you have a question? Now there's 6 cues that they look for, and it's going to be in each eye. You can't have nystagmus in one eye and not have it in the other. Okay, it goes together. So they look for lack of smooth pursuit whenever they do their fingers back into in front of your face to start off with. They look for distinct and sustained nystagmus at maximum deviation. And they shouldn't hold their finger over at maximum deviation for more than 30 seconds or it causes nystagmus. And they look for the onset of nystagmus prior to 45 degrees. And that means that they look for the person's eye to jump, and then they have to estimate the angle, subtract from 50. It's a little complicated process. It's probably the best field sobriety test that they have. It's actually a scientific test. The thing about it is because it's a scientific test, they have to perform it exactly as the procedure and the instructions say. If they don't perform it exactly as it's supposed to be done, it's an invalid test. Okay? Now, the walk and turn. Everybody's seen that where they get you out, they want you to walk a line. Okay? They might tell you to walk an imaginary line. They might tell you to walk a line in a parking lot. They might tell you to walk a white line, the fog line on the side of the road. Okay? That's the second test they're supposed to give. And what you're looking at in that is there's numerous ways to mess up that test, taking the test. The clues that they're looking for is that you can't maintain your balance, and that you start too soon, and that you stop while you're walking, while they tell you to walk and count your steps. That you don't touch heel to toe. Well, actually, you can miss by ½ an inch if you want to. That you step off the line. And one thing that I see sometimes is how officers will note that on a report is that the person stepped off the line. Well, technically, in order to step off the line, you have to actually step off the line. It doesn't mean that your foot is offline. It means you actually step over to the side. You miss the line, is what it's actually supposed to be. You raise your arms for balance. this kind of thing. The turn is a big area for a problem in the walking turn, because once you reach your 9th step, you're supposed to pivot. You're supposed to pivot on your front foot. All right, now the officers will generally not tell you exactly what to do. They say, what I want you to do is they'll show you. I want you to walk out here, and they'll do a little dance. I want you to turn around, I want you to come back. But they don't tell you exactly how to perform the test. That's a problem, because if you don't know the rules, how are you supposed to know you've done anything wrong? How are you supposed to follow the rules, and how are you supposed to be graded on it? What you're supposed to do is actually pivot on your front foot, which will be your left foot when you count the correct number of steps. And you pivot with a series of small steps. And then you return back, heel to toe, walking with your hands by your side, looking at your feet, counting your steps as you go, okay? You return back 9 steps. But that's what they're looking for. Someone have a question? Okay. That's what they're looking for, as far as that goes. If you turn incorrectly, they'll note it. And if you take the wrong number of steps, they'll note it, okay? The correct number of steps is 9. 9 heel to toe steps. It's not walk out yonder and turn around and come back. It's 9 heel to toe steps. Yes, sir.
Indication that you've been drinking is if you ask for a net under that white line.
A net.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be a good thing. Probably wouldn't be a good thing. You probably want to follow that up with officer funding. That would be a good idea. Just kidding with you, officer. Now, one thing about these tests, and we'll get into the one-leg stand test, is the last actual test. I call them the human Olympics because they're designed, people don't normally stand with their feet together, their hands by their side, and their head tilted back. They don't normally do that. Walk and turn. You don't normally walk heel to toe. That's not how people walk. All right. The last test that they have is a one-leg stand. Now the one-leg stand is, and I don't know if anybody had to do it in this room, but the one-leg stand is dependent on the person's ability to balance in the first place. Now, now one thing about me is I tore my left ankle up playing ball. I messed my right knee up lifting weights. I got a ruptured disc in the bottom of my back. I got both rotator cuffs torn up. Sports. So my thing is if I try to do the one-leg stand, I can't do it. Now I hadn't been drinking. All right? I can't do it. It makes it a little more difficult. Now as long as that officer knows that I've got issues with my balance in the first place, because I've got bad ankle, bad knee, bad back, shoulder, everything. As long as he knows that, that helps. He's supposed to ask you before you perform any of these tests, is there any reason that you can't stand still? Can't stand straight, can't stand, with your legs together. You got any medical issues? Now if he says you have any medical issues, you want to make sure you tell him. It's not that I don't trust doctors, I just don't want anybody cutting on me. So I'm going to go as long as I can go until I have to have these things fixed. Until I get where I can't go, I won't keep going. But I need to tell that officer what the problems are ahead of time. Because if it's on video and I start talking about, I can try your test, but I've got a bad left ankle, I got bad right knee, back's bad, even my shoulders are bad. If I start telling all these things, that's going to help me later on defend my case. All right? So, one thing about the one-leg stand, I don't know how many of you is married in here, but when you got married or if you've been in the military, they tell you when you're standing at attention not to lock your knees. Okay? A lot of times when you get married, they'll always tell the groomsmen, don't lock your knees, you might pass out. If you try to do the one-leg stand with your knee locked, it's pretty hard to do. If you actually break your knee just a tad, you can stand here all day long. It doesn't matter if a semi-truck's coming by on the highway, you can stand there. As soon as you lock your knee back, it makes it extremely difficult to stand. So these are some of the cues that they're looking for. These are the tests that they're supposed to give you in that order, all right, in order to determine whether they believe that you're under the influence of alcohol. So what you're looking at then is you get into that alcohol sensor that you were mentioning. You get into a situation where you have to blow in, or they'll ask you to blow into the alcohol sensor. Remember, all these tests are voluntary. You don't have to take them, okay? when you're dealing with the Alka-Sensor, it's an approved field testing device. It's not the approved testing device. The only approved testing device in Georgia is Nystagmus 5000. There's issues with it, of course, as a defense attorney, I would say. But the Alka-Sensor, if you tell them, it's been a couple hours since I had anything to drink, and you blow in the Alka-Sensor, you're going to have some problems, because you're going to blow high. There's been instances before where law enforcement, has questioned that, said, oh, no, that's not right. Alka-Sensor will, tell the difference between residual mouth alcohol. A person has blown in the Alka-Sensor, blown 000. Then taken mouthwash, scoop, Listerine, swish it around in the mouth, spit it out. Didn't swallow it, spit it out. Talk with the officer for 5-10 minutes, have him blow in the Alka-Sensor. You blow in it, they blew a .10. Okay? That's 2 points over legally intoxicated in the state of Georgia, because that's .08. All right? The officer said, well, that's the problem, that's nothing wrong with that. It must be weak batteries. Battery's bad. It goes out, changes batteries, comes back. The officer blows in it, 000. The officer takes scope, Listerine, swish it around his mouth, spits it out, talks for 5 minutes, blows in it. The officer blows a .20, 2.5 times drunk. Okay? Based on Georgia law. The things aren't accurate. They're just designed to give the officer a confirmation for his field sobriety test that he's performed on you correctly, that it's in fact alcohol is causing you to behave this way or to perform this way on the actual tests. All right. Once you go through phase 3, you're going to be arrested, pretty much. I mean, I would be arrested, because I can't perform these things except for the HGN, and I don't know if my eyes are jumping in the first place. So it's my word versus the officer's word. If I try to perform the walk and turn and the one-leg stand and everything that I'm supposed to do, I would have problems with it. I'd have problems with it just because of my medical conditions. All right? But what you're looking at in this situation is the officer confirms it with the Alka-Sensor. Does anybody have any questions about the 3 phases?
I just got one question. Just say you haven't been drinking and you want to exercise your liberty not to refuse them tests.
Mm-hmm.
They can still arrest you, assuming you've been drinking, and take you to jail and blow you?
They can arrest you for littering. They can arrest you for speeding. They can arrest you for whatever reason they pulled you over in the first place. If you get out and you say, I'm not going to take your test, I'm not going to blow in your Alka-Sensor, they're going to say, well, he smells of alcohol, his eyes are red and bloodshot. Oh, I forgot to tell you about red and bloodshot eyes. Mm-hmm. Red bloodshot eyes, you have to understand that these officers are trained under NHTSA standards, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration standards. That's who created all these tests, and says that they mean this, and this is how you do them. They set up all the procedures, but NHTSA is the standard. Okay? NHTSA did a study in, I believe, 1997, 1998, and that took out as a cue bloodshot eyes, because they said there's too many reasons rather than alcohol that can cause red and bloodshot eyes. All right? How long have you been up today? If you've been up 24 hours, you've been up 18 hours, what kind of job do you have? Are you a shift worker? All right? Have you just woken up to come to work? Is that why your eyes are red bloodshot? Allergies? Think about a diesel mechanic laying out under a big truck all day getting nothing but diesel fuel, oil, and sand in his eyes. Many reasons. So they took that cue out. However, the officers continue to use it. They write it down. Red and bloodshot eyes. Bloodshot eyes. They write it down every time they get an opportunity. Matter of fact, the other day I had a trial. I had the state patrol officer actually read that study for me, where they took that cue out. So he couldn't use it as a reason for arresting my client. The point of this, and the point as a defense attorney, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show the judge or the jury, if you get to that point, that the officer shouldn't have arrested you in the first place. You should have never, just disregard whatever test results out here, because you should have never been arrested. As a matter of fact, in that case, the judge basically didn't even get to the test result portion. He said there's no probable cause to arrest this man. Wound the case up right there. I mean, that's not a bad result for my client, who was a CDL driver. But now, when you're dealing with phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, they're all supposed to be weighted equally. And the way, as a defense attorney, the way I do it is I get on and I start talking about how many Qs is in phase one. And let's talk about what your score, what grade you really got for driving. Well, you got 34 Qs prior to them turning on the blue lights, and you got 6 Qs after they turn on the blue lights. So you've got a total here of 30 Qs. Well, let's just say there were 4 points apiece. Let's just say that. And it's a little different, but let's just say 4 points apiece. So if they say that you were weaving, and that's the only reason you were stopped, because you were weaving, you made a 96. What does it take to pass? You know, when I was in school, kindergarten, first, I guess not kindergarten, they might teach you smiley faces or something, but first grade and on up, they gave you, passing was a 70. So what's passing? Well, you were weaving. That's the reason I stopped you, and that's one of the reasons that I'm arresting you for DUI, because you were weaving, bad driving. That's 96 on phase one. All right, let's flip over. Let me look at phase two. 28 total Qs. Let's just say they're worth 4 points apiece. Let's say you've got bloodshot eyes, there's an open container in the car, and you have slurred speech. All right? Well, slurred speech, the officer's never talked to you before, doesn't know how you speak. So unless you're just really having some problems, drool running out the side of your mouth, we can knock out slurred speech. And then let's get down to bloodshot eyes. Have the officer read the study from NHTSA, the standard in his industry. Have him read about bloodshot eyes is no longer a Q. We'll take that out. The last thing they're left with is alcohol containers. You got an open container in the car. Yes, sir, I do. It's kind of hard to beat it. You either do, you don't. Well, you make a 96. So when you're driving, phase one, you made a 96. Phase two, you make a 96. That's 2 out of the 3 equally weighted phases. Then you get into phase three, the HGN, or the field sobriety testing. Remember, HGN, walk and turn, one leg stand, alpha sensors is the standard that they're supposed to follow, but they don't do it, like in your situation. They don't do that. Let's get right over to blowing the alpha sensor. All right, blows an alpha sensor. You have to understand, alpha sensor results are not admissible in court. They can't say you blew a .14, a .20. They can't say that. They can only say that you're positive or negative for ethyl alcohol. That's all they can say. They can't say really high. I had an officer try that one time. Can't say that. They have to say positive or negative. All right, so basically you made a 96, phase one. Phase two, you made a 96. Phase three, they skipped the first 3 field sobriety tests and went straight to the alpha sensor. The only thing they can say is positive or negative. It's going to make it a little more difficult than to prove that you were under the influence of alcohol to the extent that you were incapable of operating a vehicle safely. That's the standard that they have to have. And think about what I was telling you a while ago. When you pull up to a roadblock, they have to testify that based on their observation of your driving, their personal contact with you, and your performance on the field sobriety test, that you were rendered incapable of operating a vehicle safely due to alcohol. All right, has anybody got any questions? That basically covers all 3 phases of their training. And I've gone to the classes that they've had on field sobriety testing. I've had instructors, the same instructors that the State Patrol have, done the same classes. And just to learn the proper orders, everything about the field sobriety testing is a 3-day, all-day ordeal where you're tested multiple times to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing. But quite frankly, if you don't perform these tests regularly and do them correctly each time, you get out of practice for it. You start forgetting to give instructions. As a matter of fact, I was called down for forgetting to ask the person I was giving my test to, do you understand these instructions? Because I didn't say, do you understand these instructions? They said I had to redo the test, the complete test. I had to go back through the full procedure again because I didn't ask, do you understand my instructions? Okay, so that's how technical they and how serious they are about it when they're trained. The officers have good training, but then they're like everybody else. They forget. You know, they're not machines. You know, they will forget something, and they're not perfect. And that's like a machine. Machines aren't perfect either. So there's a lot of things that can happen in a DUI encounter that can be brought out to defend a person to show that either they were or they weren't. And you can believe that everything that you do, they're going to take it down, they're going to note it in a report, or it's going to be on video. You can believe that, because they're going to use every little thing that you do, say, every time you cough, every time you sway, every time you just, they say stand over there by the car and you back up to the car and lean on the car. Well, you're obviously using it for support. So you got to take into account everything that happens in this and be able to pick it apart to defend yourself, you know, when you get into that situation. Yes, sir.
So, what's the name of the test when they take you down and the state trooper take you to the jail and you blow through a machine?
That's the Intox 5000. That's the approved testing device in Georgia. That's it.
Is
Now,
that
others-
admissible in a state court of law?
It is. The Intox 5000 is if they go through all the proper procedure, have the proper documents, and perform the test correctly. Now what you're looking at is a majority of the field sobriety test. When you look at the Intox 5000, you're trying to exclude that. You're trying to keep that test out. You don't want it to come in. You're trying to keep it out. You have a motion to suppress to keep that out. And if they do it correctly, it comes in. If they do it incorrectly for a myriad of reasons, that test is not supposed to come in. It's excluded. Now with the field sobriety testing, you can't exclude field sobriety testing because, except for the HGN. Because remember, the HGN is a scientific test. If they don't do it correctly, if they don't perform all the steps correctly, then it's a bad test. It's inadmissible. Okay? You can't use it. So you can keep that test out. Now the rest of the tests, you can't exclude them because they're not scientific tests. What it does is the judge's ruling will basically say, we're not going to kick these tests out, the one-legged stand, the walk and turn. We're not kicking that out. It's going to go to the weight and credibility of the evidence. So there's a difference between a motion to suppress and having that evidence actually suppressed and getting into the field sobriety test where they say, well, you know, we're not going to suppress it. It's just going to come into the weight and credibility of any evidence gathered. So that's where you come in and you have to start saying, well, if you did the test correctly, you would have done it this way, but you did it incorrectly, and you start showing what they did wrong.
Right. You're right, because the state trooper asked me, did they give me those tests? And I was like, no.
And the trooper arrested you. I had one the other day where,
I mean, the sheriff department pulled me over,
uh-huh.
and then they called him to the scene.
Mhm.
And then he did his little test, and then we went down, and then I blew through the machine.
When you say he did his little test,
Yeah, he gave me the one on the outside too.
he just gave you the alka-seltzer?
Yeah, the one that you blow.